Let's before we switch off, Dan Hardy, one half of the EMEA A team. Let's have a sit down with Dan and maybe have a little breakdown of the card as well. See what fights Dan Hardy's most excited about. See if they're similar to mine too. Dan, how's it going, buddy? Okay, yeah, you're good. Let's
sit down.
yeah, let's take a pew. Yeah, why not? Definitely.
Old, that's what it is.
Exactly. Let's. I was doing a bit of reading earlier. I was doing a little bit of reading. I've got to say I haven't finished it just yet, but I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. But before we moved on to anything else, the book, did you write it yourself? Did you have a ghostwriter? How did it work out?
I worked with a writer, yeah, a guy called Paul Gibson, who's a boxing journalist from Belfast. He's a fantastic writer, and Headline approached me interested in having me write a book, and they said that he'd be a great person to work with. I mean, writing something autobiographical, to sit down and do it on your own, it would take a very, very talented person to do that. And I don't think it would have been the story that it is without having someone to bounce off and to have good conversations with. And because he had such a removed perspective coming from boxing and not really knowing a great deal about MMA, he asked all the right questions, you know. So it was a really fun process, and he spent some time over with me, and I spent some time in Madrid with him and his family, and we worked our ass off for about 6 or 7 months to put it out, and I'm very pleased with it. Yeah.
Nice. And it's available now. Is it available in all good bookstores?
It's available for pre-order now. It will be released on the 23rd of next week. Yeah. So
there you go. Pick up your coffee. Let's jump in. Is Big John as well? We'll join him to the party shortly. But we were at the media day today, and like the fighters, they're sizing one another up. You know, I was kind of sizing guys up, and you were there yourself. Who looked nice and fresh and strong to you, and who did you think looked a little bit, looked like he was, struggling to make the weight? If you like, or maybe just, the moment getting to them a little bit.
It's difficult to say, really. I think everybody looked good. Reza Madadi is just like laser focused. I mean, he's so excited for this one. He's got a lot of respect for Joe Duffy.
Yeah.
Joe, as always, is just super relaxed. He's like, everything's kind of matter of fact. I'm here to do a job, and I think that's a really intriguing matchup between those two, and I think both of them look in great shape, ready for this one. I think Cheeto's starting to realise now he's got a Marlon Vera, I call him by his nickname. I think since Marlon Vera's arrived in London, I think he realises the scale and the interest around his fight with Brad. Whether that will have an effect on the fight and on his performance, I don't know, but
does he know he's here to play a part for the UK fans, like Brad kind of did against Uriah Faber in California? If he beats Brad, he's going to have to be armed, escorted out of the place. Let's be honest.
I think he realises the role that he's playing, and I think that he realises as well that the UK fans, no matter how much they love Brad and they want Brad to succeed, I think we just want a good fight. And I think that the point last week when we thought that Brad may not be able to appear on the card was far more gut-wrenching for most of the fans than it would be for him to be on the card and to not win. I think respect for Cheeto to coming over and taking this fight. And he's just such a personable guy. He's in such a good space as well. He moved to San Diego in December, moved his family with him, started working with Timo Yama, and he seems to have settled there really well. And I don't know. I don't think this. No matter what happens in this fight, it's not going to set him back. He's got so much momentum behind him, and to come in and face Brad and to get this kind of attention around it, it will be a great memory for him. And maybe even inspire him to retire at the right time of his career as well. You never know.
Yeah. One thing that did stand out, and I thought straight away when I seen him, I hope Dan Hardy's signed that off, was Mark Jacasey's red mohawk. Did he come to you first? Did he speak to you about, copying the trademark?
I did hear it rumoured. I did hear him mention that he might be switching to a different colour, yeah. I think it looks great. It suits him. Actually looks better on him than it did on me, so that's a little bit annoying. But no, he looks great on it. And, to have such a talented athlete, have such a distinctive haircut as well, keep that tradition going. I like it.
Couple of awesome all-UK derby-style matchups on this card. The Brett Johns Entwistle encounter, two guys. Obviously, Brett Johns looks sensational so far in his very short UFC career. Enti, you could probably say, hasn't quite lived up to expectation. It's a tough time in the UFC right now because people are getting cut with winning records. So the pressure's really on, both these guys in a weird kind of way.
It is, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Brett Johns coming in because he's unbeaten. He had a great UFC debut. He looked like an old-time pro. I mean, he really looked like a seasoned veteran in the way he fights, and his corner team were fantastic as well. So I think he's got a real secure network behind him, pushing him forward. And Entwistle's in a different situation because he came into the UFC knowing full well what he's trying to do. He wants to get people to the floor and jump on an ankle as quickly as possible. And I think because he was so focused on that in a couple of his UFC fights, he opened himself up for the TKO loss. Yeah. And he knows it. He knows he's had to make some changes. And chatting to him yesterday, one thing he said is, I've always wanted to be the best in the UK. And Brett Johns is at number 1 in the UK rankings now. I'm at number 3. So this is the best opponent I could have had. So, I mean, it's a great matchup. Just as, you know, Bradley Scott Askham. Yeah. I mean, you know, 2 top UK middleweights, both really talented, both with the potential to go on and do great things.
I was going to obviously pick up on that one as well. I've seen Scott around everywhere at the moment. He looks great. He's bubbling. He was at the media day today. He looked fine. Still haven't seen Bradley Scott, and we talked about this on the breakdown show. We recorded it last week. You know, I don't know what he's been doing. I don't know where he's been training. Have you seen him? Is he here? Is it happening?
I haven't seen him.
He may not be here.
No, I don't know. No, he's definitely going to be in the building, but he does like to hide away a bit. He doesn't seem to really enjoy fight week until the fight's out of the way. That's. I remember last time he fought here, I saw him in the bar afterwards in this same spot, and he was enjoying himself then. But before the fight, he just seems so very focused on what he has to do. And it's, again, you know, it's a great matchup, very polarizing styles. You know, Scott Askham with the reach, with the knees, with the long range striking, and Bradley Scott's that bully. You know, he likes to push forward, push people around, and he's got. And I said this before when we commentated on him. There's something about him that's very Forrest Griffin. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? He's just like a big, imposing kind of, and no offense, Forrest, I love you, guy, but like a very kind of apish kind of build to him, you know what I mean? And you would imagine as soon as he gets his hands on you, it would be quite overwhelming the way he can move people around. And I would imagine that he's going to have a strength advantage with Scott Askham, with Scott being so tall and lean.
Last time Scott was here, though, magnificent performance, the walkaway KO. I think that was last time in London. Was it London? Was it Manchester? Dublin? Yes. Amazing. Yeah. You know, under a bit of pressure himself. Didn't get a win last time out. Neither did Bradley. You know, that both of them come into it with a bit of pressure. And I say the climate with the UFC right now, nobody can afford to pick up a loss.
No, you're right. And I mean, a nice highlight reel knockout like Scott Askham got over Chris Dempsey is the kind of thing that will keep you around for an extra fight. Yeah. Just like Entwistle, you know, going after those submissions, chasing the finish, will keep you around a little bit longer because that's what we want. We want finishes. We want a fight to be conclusive. And that knockout that he got, I mean, well, I went out to Vegas literally the week after that. And when I walked into the UFC office, I was chatting to a few people, and they were like, oh, that fight of the week, the head kick guy. You know, they didn't even know his name, but they remembered the head kick. That's the kind of thing that people, it sticks in people's minds. And he has that potential. He's got great knees. We saw them before he came to the UFC. And I think, if anything, if he gets backed up against the fence with Bradley Scott, he's got to employ those knees to try and keep him off. And I think that might be a real strong weapon for him. The
good thing about Scott is, as well, obviously, he's moved his camp to Florida. He's gone out to ATT. So he's being, you know, he's going after it aggressively. He's obviously making sacrifices to make sure he stays where he needs to be.
Yeah. You know, anytime a fighter can step into a big gym, a super gym like ATT or, I mean, you know, TriStar or Jackson Wink, even if they don't stay there for very long, what it does is it gives them a realistic perspective of where they stand in the sport. Yeah. You know, you can take a young fighter, you can build him up on the UK scene, you can make him feel invincible, and he may be convinced that he can step into McGregor's shoes and do that job. Yeah. The reality is, if you put him on the mat at a top gym, someone's going to beat him up. Yeah. And that's either going to shake his confidence or it's going to spur him on to be better. And we don't really know until we see what happens with these fighters in their first performance after one of these moves. Now, Bradley Scott is, you know, he's young, he's enthusiastic, and he's a very talented kid. So how he responds to being on a mat full of sharks at ATT is, you know, that's the real question. And I mean, we saw Brad Pickett respond so well when he went out to ATT. He picked up the grappling game very, very quickly. And I would like to see, there aren't many things you would need to add to Bradley Scott to make him a real contender.
Yeah. The highlight today, before I bring John still floating around, before I bring John in, I mean, last one at the main card, let me just finish by asking you about the highlight of the media day, which was probably the head-to-head between Joe Duffy and Reza Mad Dog Madadi. How do you see that fight unfold? And obviously it's a strange situation. You know, Mad Dog's been come back into the UFC. We're hearing that Joe's on his last fight with the UFC, which is kind of two ways to look at it. Is it a gamble? Is it not a gamble? It's, again, another strange matchup that's got such a weird narrative behind it, but is offering so much.
Well, yeah, again, you know, a young kid against